Hello and welcome to The Found Cause, where we found our cause and serve the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my left is...
Sebastian, the bookkeeper.
And virtually, this is a category we've never done before. Virtually, we've got...
Theodore, under the PC.
Under the PC. That's a weird place to be. So thanks for joining us, everyone. Again, a weird combo, virtual, non-virtual. I don't think we've ever done this before, but if you're not even seeing the video, then it doesn't bother you. I have a weird confession to make to both of you guys. You'll see this peanut butter here. You've probably seen it before. You saw it in our Unitarian episode. In fact, I realized the other day during one of our three-way virtual meetups that I had peanut butter sitting in the background, like in the shot, because I had just been eating straight peanut butter right before the episode. So I have a confession to make. I want to come out clean. I do, in fact, love peanut butter. This looks like the same jar that you saw previously on many of the episodes, but it's in fact not. I go through about a jar of peanut butter a week. That's true. So I just want to let you guys know I do love peanut butter. It's a sad confession.
If you love it so much, then why don't you just marry it?
Why, you little...
What are you doing?
Love?
I hate when people say that's the worst joke ever. Stop it.
What is love?
Baby, don't hurt me. No more.
Wow. That's a lot of commitment for the pun. Oh my gosh. What is love, baby? Don't hurt me. So if you aren't seeing, if you don't know 90s music, that's you're missing out. Okay. I think that charts the top of like really weird intros we've done.
Yes.
Then I just do one with like a weird mustache and a hat. We're escalating for the sake of use. I promise you. So this episode, in case you're wondering,
I did not approve of this.
is purely... Yes, we did. We all come up with an intro. We approved it before. This episode is on love, but not just like some ooey gooey episode about kissing each other or whatever else people talk about love, or one of those really high-minded theological, philosophical discussions of love. Will involve theology and philosophy, of course, like we always do, but I want to get to the brass tacks of what the Bible really says, what people use love, quote-unquote, to pin God into being, and then what some other philosophies and religions and movements of today say love is, and how it really is portrayed in the Bible, because love is used a lot, I think, pretty famously. I think most Christians know, if they've been to church once or twice, that love in the English sense is not the same as love in Greek or love in Hebrew, so we're going to talk about those differences, and then we're going to talk about how some people say that God isn't loving, and so they won't believe in him, or they don't believe in the Old Testament or whatever, because their version of love conflicts with God is love, and they just don't understand how a loving God could, condemn the Canaanites or put people to hell or whatever else they might say. So we're going to talk all things love today, the controversial, the non-controversial, and run through everything. Anything you guys want to say before we get right into the biblical definition of love and talk about some scripture? I'll take that as a no. Okay, so first things first, we want to go through the biblical definitions of love. I don't know about you guys, or I should ask, Theodore or Sebastian, when I say love in the Bible, what's the first verse that comes to your mind? I have a couple that come to my mind. Do you have any in particular?
I'll let Theodore start, because I do have...
It's a Bible quiz, actually.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I do have two pulled up if we need a cheat here.
Should I just read a few?
Sure, go ahead. If you haven't pulled up.
1 John 4, 7-8. Dear friends, let us love one another. Love comes from God. Everyone who has been born of God and knows... Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love.
Yes, and that's the one that first comes to my mind, for example. That's what I had pulled up, is the whole God is love thing, because that's used by every soccer mom with a bumper sticker, every pagan priestess that murders goats in their spare time. Like, everybody uses this thing, and they love it, to use the word love again. They love that quote, God is love, man, because what often I think they like to use it for is saying that God isn't actually a God, like super liberal, quote-unquote Christians who don't believe that Jesus was resurrected from the dead, and they don't believe that there's a real God, but they say they believe in the resurrection, they say they believe in God, but they redefine what God and resurrection are. Those people absolutely, like if they could pin one verse and have it tattooed in their chest and name their kids it would be God is love, because they don't believe God is actually anything. They believe that love is God as opposed to God is love. So they believe that love is God. So they replace God with the word and concept of love, whereas love is just something. It's one of the many facets that God is in Christianity. So in that verse, what you just read, Theodore, clearly isn't saying that God is only love. It's saying that God is love, and therefore anybody that's not loving is not with God, right? They're not being led by the Spirit. But it's not saying that God is only love. And I think that's the most important distinguishing thing to make with that verse.
And what you were saying is that a lot of people want to say that, or a lot of people want to define God by saying that he is love.
Yes.
But really, God defines what love is. So we have to look to him to even know what it is.
Yeah, which it brings to mind another super famous love verse from the Bible. I don't know if you have anything before I skip to that. Either of you, I don't want to interrupt you guys.
John 3:16 to 21.
There's one.
Should I read that?
Sure.
Do it.
For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned. But whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light, because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God.
And that's a part of 3:16, because it's past 16 that you'll never hear anybody talk about, especially those who don't believe have been condemned already. Because that's not what people usually like to talk about. But certainly we've all heard John 3:16 put on posters and signs. I mean, it's less popular these days because who even cares about Christians these days? But back when Christians used to be important, they put it on signs, football games, and whatever, to try to get people to understand the gospel by saying that for God so loved, our key word of the day, loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. So in that sense, the love encompasses all of what you just read, Theodore. It's not just that he sent his only begotten Son to save the world, but it's also that those who believe in him live and those who don't believe in him die. Like, all of that is love, right? Because it's all the consequence of God sending down his Son in love, resulted in all of that. Some being saved, some not being saved, all that. That's a perfect one. I think that's probably maybe the most popular verse that people quote in general. So of course they're going to bring it up when they hear about love, because love's included. Do you have any, Sebastian?
I do, from Ephesians. In love, he predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, in accordance with his pleasure and will, to the praise of his glorious grace, which he has freely given us in the one he loves.
So there you get two loves, double the love. First thing, in love he predestined us, right? So depending on your theology, of course, we're going to take a Reformed theology stance, but even if you're not Reformed, you can still take this to say that God pre-planned for these who are going to be his, and that's in love, right? He's lovingly giving the gift that was referenced in John 3:16, right? That he sent his only begotten Son in love, right?
To save his people.
To save his people. So this predestination is a love act. But then he also says that he loves the Son, right? And the Son didn't need that same saving. So clearly love is not strictly defined by self-sacrifice, but it is. It can be, love. Self-sacrifice is love. Like what God predestined to save us includes self-sacrifice, so that is love. But it's not only love, because the Father loves the Son, and there was no he loved him before the self-sacrifice, right? Like, it's not required.
And on that same note, after reading a lot of Eastern fathers, they'd like to talk about the Trinity a lot. So once, and I'll touch more on this later, when I finally get to finalize my research on the Church of the East, but on that later, that love you can observe, it's comes from God because of the eternal relation between the triune members of the God of the Godhead. So
it's an evident, ever-existing state, huh?
Yes, the Father always loved the Son always loved the Spirit always loved the Father. So love is a thing because of that eternal source, if you can put it that way.
Now, a verse I have, and this is one that I'm not surprised you didn't say, because there's so many verses about love, but this is, I think, probably the second most quoted verse when I think love, and what people know too, is from 1 Corinthians, which, by the way, 1 Corinthians has got to be one of the most hated books of the Bible, because it has all that anti-homosexual and anti-woman stances in it. So you'd have a lot of people that want to just, throw it into the trash can, especially on the more liberal bent. But the same liberal bending Christians love this verse, and I guess maybe that's part of the reason they don't try to throw out 1 Corinthians. First Corinthians chapter 13 says, "If I speak in tongues or of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or clanging cymbal. I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. I give all that I possess to the poor, and give over my body to hardship, that I may boast. But I do not have love, and I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. And where there's knowledge, it will pass away. For we know that in part, if we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away the ways of childhood behind me. For now, we see only a reflection as in the mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So different parts of that you probably heard quoted separately or all together, but that's the whole piece. It's all of chapter 13 from 1 Corinthians. And I think that's probably the grounding point that we'll take for what love means. However, I will say, and maybe it's just me being really anti-sappy sentiments, I don't think that this is the entire holistic picture of love, in that it obviously is very descriptive of love, right? Love is gentle, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud, it doesn't dishonor others, it's not self-seeking, all that jazz, which is all true, and I want to testify to that, and let's talk about it. But I will say there's a portion of love that also has discipline in it. In fact, it says, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. And I think part of that, that's not explicitly stated here, is that in love, God also disciplines those he loves. He also, in love, punishes the wicked. And I think that's the thing that is never thought about when you think about this, is God's still loving, totally loving when he punishes the wicked, which we'll examine later. But anyways, not to get off track here, this is clearly a text about the positive, nice attributes of love, like it's patient, it's kind, it does not envy. And I think this is the root of the two commands that Jesus and God and the Bible all together tell us are the root of all the law and the prophets. So all obedience to God it depends on these two commands. Love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Both of them involve love, and if you don't know what love is, well, you won't be able to obey either one. So I don't know if Theodore or Sebastian, you have any thoughts on how this kind of love, so this patient, kind, envying love, how does that translate to how we can or how we should love God with all our heart, soul, and strength, and then love our neighbors ourselves? If, for example, if God commanded you to do something, is it loving? Can you love God and ignore him? Maybe I'm teeing this up too much, but how do we apply this definition of love to obeying those two commands? And it could be it could be a very simple answer. I'm not asking for any high-minded philosophy, but you can get it if you want. Wow, we're just awed by the power of the text, huh? Let me give my thoughts, huh? I think that to love God means you are patient and kind with God, and you do not envy, you don't boast, you're not proud to God. So imagine if you were proud of your own works to God, and I don't mean proud like you're rejoicing in your works, but you're like, God, look what I've done, like almost like I'm better than you, like boasting in your works to God. Well, that's not love for God. Equally, if you were envious of God, like say the serpent's temptation of Eve in the garden, and subsequently Adam, saying he just doesn't want you to be like him, right? If you eat this fruit, you'll be like him, knowing good and evil. That's envy. Obviously, Satan had envy there. The serpent had envy, and then it was passed on to Eve. She envied and therefore wasn't loving God, and therefore broke the law. So you can see how, while it's a simple command in that it just says love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength, it encompasses all the different things that could break it. Envy breaks that love. Not being kind breaks that love. Not being patient breaks that love. Boasting breaks that love. Dishonoring others breaks that love. Being self-seeking breaks that love. So, I mean, it encompasses all things. So for God, I think if you well, I don't just think, I know the scripture says, if you love me, Jesus says, if you love me, you'll obey me, right? And equally, if you love God, you will not delight in evil, but rejoice in the truth, and you'll always trust, always hope, always persevere. And that's why the command, love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, well, it seems simple, and Israelites back in the day, like the rich young ruler tells Jesus, I've kept all the commandments, I've done all those things. It's impossible for anyone to keep, because you not obey somebody if they're asking you to do something that's not loving. It's just God always asks you to do something that's loving. But for others, again, you don't envy them, you don't, you're not impatient with them, you're not unkind to them, right? Now, all that being said, I gave a caveat before this whole section, you can discipline somebody like you discipline a child or even a criminal or somebody who's trying to attack you, whatever. You can do things that don't seem kind, but it's because you also don't delight in evil and you rejoice in truth and you always protect, you're always truthful, you always hope, and you always persevere. So there are things you can do to other people that are just and loving that don't seem like they're not happy, they're not mutually happy things, right? When you protect your family from a criminal who's breaking into the house and he's trying to attack your family and you shoot him, well, he doesn't think you love him because you just shot him, but you're actually not only loving your family, you're also loving justice, which forced your hand to shoot the criminal. If you didn't protect your family, you wouldn't be loving your family. In fact, you wouldn't be loving justice. I don't even know that it could be said that you're loving the criminal, because you actually weren't executing justice. You weren't fulfilling properly love. So in that case, it doesn't look like love to shoot a criminal, obviously, but it actually is, and I think that's an important nuance. Any other comments on that?
Oh, really? What an interesting scenario. I have to. No, usually, you wouldn't think of love in such a dramatic situation, but it is prescribed in the law, and it's the law we know came from God. So God is good, therefore the law is good. So it's interesting. I'll ponder more on that.
Yeah,
are we on that? Are we on that objection now?
On what objection?
How could a loving God hate?
We will get to it. Let's not go there
sorry.
quite yet. But yeah, we put a pin in it because we definitely want to go there, and I think that's probably the most commonly heard objection in this episode that we'll talk about. One last thing I'll say, I think, so Jesus says the whole of the law, and even, pre Jesus coming, he said it in the Deuteronomy, the whole of the law is summed up in love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and then love your neighbors yourself. There are laws, like you just alluded to, Sebastian, in the New Testament or Old Testament law that say that you can and should, you have the right to kill somebody that has entered your house at night because you don't know what they're doing, right? Some robber, they could be coming to rape, they could be coming to kill you, like they could be doing a lot of things, so you have the right to kill them, and it's considered just because you're actually protecting, you're loving. And so there's only two categories that kind of law can fit into. It can't be a third category. It can't be like a self-defense category. I mean, it could be, but it needs to ultimately fit into either loving the Lord God or loving your neighbor as yourself. And so I would say it's loving your neighbor as in your family or anybody that might also be victimized by this criminal. But ultimately, it's actually subordinate to the first commandment, which is loving God with all your heart, soul, and strength, because God says they're called to protect. He calls you to uphold justice. And it's justice that a person sneaking in unbeknownst to you, trying to murder you or whatever, gets his just punishment on earth. So all that being said, there are loves that are more equal than others. For example, I believe God loves himself more than he loves the world. However, he gave himself, he sent the Son for the world, knowing ultimately that it wasn't going to compromise his love for the Son. It wasn't going to compromise the love in the Trinity. But I do believe that his love for himself is bigger than his love for us. The only way we get to piggyback off that is because he's covered us in his blood and we have his righteousness. But we don't get the same rights that Jesus does, right? None of us will sit at the right hand of the Father. That's just how it is, right? Like when James and John's mom comes up to Jesus and says, "Promise me that these two sons of mine will sit one at your right and one at your left in your kingdom." Jesus is like, no. He doesn't say, "Oh, I love you, I'll give whatever, it's a good thing and I'll give it to you." There's a greater love, and that's obeying God. And of course, God's not going to put James and John at the right hand and left hand of Jesus. One of them would be sitting in God the Father's lap anyways, which they didn't quite understand.
So he does display different loves to different beings. For example, angels.
Mhm.
Jesus never died to redeem Satan.
Yeah, nor the rest of the angels.
Right. All the fallen creatures, I mean. And likewise for the Israelites, he did love them more than at the time than other nations. So there's different degrees. It's still there. It's just different, distinct, I would say.
Yeah, and here's this might be like way off topic, but I'm just gonna put it in this whole like tiered love thing. I've heard that it's a healthy boundary for fathers to give to their children, that the children know that the father actually loves the wife more than the children. Not that he doesn't love the children, but that the priority comes to the wife over the children.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. I don't know that everyone agrees with that, but I think it can be healthy. So I would be inclined, I don't have a definitive opinion here, but I would incline to say that that's correct, the correct way to handle things, and that it's good order. Like the children, it benefits the children. It doesn't make them envious or inherently or anything like that. It actually shows that there's a right ordering of love in the household. And then again, that's never to say that the father doesn't love the children, right? He's just setting the expectations, and I think that's similar with God. Again, I'm willing to be corrected, but I kind of think that's a love prioritization as well.
But then if like a father and a wife and their child are like in an Arctic sea, and they only have like one little board, then the father will sacrifice himself and let the other ones hold the board.
Yes. But see, he's the one sacrificing himself. But the question, here's another question, another moral scenario.
Oh.
If you have a wife and a kid and a husband, she's pregnant, I should say, the wife is pregnant with the kid, and the husband has to choose, do I save the wife or the kid because there's something wrong terribly, right? And they have to choose a procedure to do. I would think, now, ideally, you say, let's try to save both, right? Do whatever procedure tries to save both. And if one of them dies, it's in God's hand, but we're going to try to save both. But if you're forced to either, shoot one or shoot the other kind of thing, I would think the father is right to let the child die. I mean, I don't think killing anybody in these scenarios is necessary. Like I said, ideally, even in some weird scenario, you try to save the baby when you take it out prematurely or whatever's having to be done. But again, I would think that prioritizing the wife's life is morally correct versus the child. Now, I mean, I'm willing to make room. The wife, I'm sure, would be like, save the kid or whatever. Sometimes that happens, and then you have to decide, what you're going to do. But in any case, that's probably a rabbit trail.
It's so dramatic.
But going along that rabbit trail, if the husband were to save his wife, then they can still be a couple and have other children, presumably. Whereas if the father were to try to save only the baby, then the baby would presumably grow up with a single father, and that's less ideal as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you start to get into some of those things, like I think you're trying to calculate too many things. I think you just have to make it on the moment basis, which is the wife's life. It's a love for the wife take precedence over the child. Now, I will say, to even further go down the rabbit trail, if she's pregnant with twins, and the scenario is that both of them die versus the mom, I actually think that the twins take precedence now because it's 2 lives versus 1. So I mean, there's that to consider too. Like, for example, if you're in a scenario like Holocaust scenario or whatever, and the wife or the husband is like, leave me behind so that you can take yourself and the 5 children and get out of here while the Nazis get me, or whatever the scenario is, I actually think the spouse is right to leave the husband or wife or whoever's having to be left behind and take the 5 children, because that's 6 lives versus 1. If that makes any sense.
In that scenario, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, now we really are getting into heavy-handed philosophy. I said we weren't going to do it. Now we're in some weird scenario.
This is very morbid.
Pregnant with twins that are going to die. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Let's move into a portion of this talk that...
could I interject again?
Go ahead.
So you mentioned God loves himself more than he loves us. But I would say, in fact, it is for our benefit, and because he loves us, that he loves himself more than us. Because if he would give us more love or give us more power or give us something we can't handle, then we might just completely destroy things, blow things up, and all the...
Yeah, I agree. I think that, so if God ceased to be God, essentially, right, like you're saying, like if he ceased to be the perfect one who loves himself, fully and all that, then a lot of things would end in disaster, right? So I agree, but God loved himself before he created men, meaning that I think his love is inherently greater than men. It might incidentally be good for us, just because the whole universe benefits from God being God and loving himself fully. But I think he loves himself kind of regardless of what it does for us, right?
Yeah. Nonetheless, it's to our benefit.
Certainly, but he's not doing it for our benefit. He just is for our benefit. Yeah.
It's incidental or tertiary.
Sure. Okay, so let's transition into talking about other views of love. So not the question of how can a loving God hate or whatever. We'll get to that. But more along the lines
Preview.
of preview. Well, everybody knows that complaint, so we'll get to it. But first, let's talk about other religions, other philosophies of love that differ from this. Now, I will admit the Christian worldview has, and just the inherent image of God on people's hearts, inherently turns love typically to meaning exactly what we've described here, right? But you can even hear in our weird moral philosophies that Christian love is specific and defined. And so there are things that people will differ on that I think are the Christian way of loving that people will say is not loving. For example, there's plenty of pacifists out there, Christian and non-Christian alike, that say that shooting the thief coming into the house, or whoever it is, maybe it's not a thief, maybe it's a murderer, coming into the house to save the family is actually not loving because it's violated some higher principle that says don't do violence. So there are competing philosophies of what love constitutes, and let's talk about them so that we can show the superiority of Christian love, I think. Theodore, you had mentioned before we did this podcast that there are some objectors in like Hinduism or Buddhism that have a view of love that we all say love in English, same words. You're thinking they mean the same thing, but pretty important to define definitions because their love doesn't quite mean what we mean, does it? Or maybe Sebastian, I don't know. Do you have some comments on these other religious loves?
I do. Primarily, not so much on Buddhism. Actually, you know what? I'll throw in my thoughts on Buddhism. Just as I was saying earlier that love is a thing because it has existed eternally between the persons of the Trinity, that affection, care for one another. You cannot have that in Islam because God is a monad, as we went with our Unitarianism. Like, who is he loving for eternity past? Like himself? That turns into, if he's a single unitary being, there's nothing to love.
Nothing to love, yeah.
And if it's just himself as a singular
one person,
it would be. Some have argued it would turn into self-ingratiation or whatever, along one of those words. But if it's shared equally within the three beings of the Trinity, then it is it's a sustainable, stable, consistent love, I would say. But that's for Islam. In Buddhism, since depending on the school, if the universe is eternal and the goal is to disappear and fade into nothingness, that's the highest level of enlightenment, then love really has no foundation. You cannot justify showing affection to others.
Well, there's some justification, right? Because there's karma. It's some universal unwritten code that says what proper things are, and we're assuming. I mean, maybe it's like a Christian syncretism here. We're assuming that good things are loving things because the image of God in us tells us that the law is to love God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so, karma generally tries to align itself with what is loving. But you make a good point that if you don't have the same God defined, not only is your love going to be off, because the love is different in Islam than it is in Christianity by default, because there's a Trinitarian God versus a Unitary God. It's also different because if you worship a different God, he's going to prescribe different things. Like karma has different prescriptions for how to be good than the Christian law. And so your love is going to look totally different because you have different law.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And on that same note, as Michael was judging me for when trying to immerse in Buddhism, trying to study some meditations, save your comments.
I will. Don't meditate, folks.
Yes. Seconded.
Meditate on scriptures, okay.
Yes. Meditate in the Christian way.
Yes. But what you don't want to meditate in the Bible is doing this, that you want to think positive thoughts and emanate. It's this loving kindness meditation. I think I mentioned it briefly. One of the types of meditations that you can do as a Buddhist. It's you're thinking and you're trying to emanate love to other beings. Could be your family, could be your friends, could be strangers, could be creatures, could be mountains, rivers, all forces in the universe.
Okay.
Practicing loving kindness, part of that concept. So there's the concept of love in their view. You're emanating it, you're thinking it, you're wishing, sending good vibes. I mean, that would be the American way of putting it, I suppose. What do you guys make of that? That you, on your meditation, you are actually sending love to strangers, sending love to your friends while you're sitting down with your eyes closed and trying to slow down your breath. What are your reactions to that?
There's a difference between thought and action. The whole book of James. And then also, I thought Buddhism the purpose was to get rid of desire. So where does the desire to love or to project feelings at others come from? Or why is that good or loving?
What a great question. And we talked about on the Buddhism episode, this is for the introduction to Buddhism, that you want to practice these things because they're good. Ironically, there's a contradiction, as you pointed out, Theodore, that even this contradicts the end goal, which is down the line to rid yourself of all emotion, desires, or anything. So at the end of the day, you don't want to end up doing that when you're at the later stages. But in the beginning, it is just the introduction, because they say it's good. They say this is a good thing. And I would say that was Buddha's desire as a creature made in the image of God who just couldn't escape that. Yes, he understood what the end goal was, but he's prescribing these processes that contradict the end goal, as you have pointed out.
I think it's also important to go. So Buddhism and Islam and others have weird views of love, right? I mean, they're kind of similar because they believe in like treating neighbors well, or whatever that means. Typically, like non-violence is one of them. Although Islam, considers some forms of violence like Christians would. To Islam's credit, Christianity also warrants violence being love in some ways. Like I just talked about the murderer sneaking into your house. Like it's loving, and generally to shoot him or whatever. You'd somehow defend your family by harming him. Because that's God's law and you're upholding justice, right? So similarly, in Islam, of course, they have the wrong God, wrong law, but they would say it's loving to go on war and jihad against non-believers, right? So their love looks different because of those principles. But here's a maybe this is like going to get super philosophical anyways, but in the West, in America that is, and in Europe and other places that speak English, we say love is just as one word. So love can get very confused very quickly because it can incorporate what the Buddhists mean for love, and it can incorporate what the Muslims mean for love, and it can incorporate what Christians say is love, and it can incorporate, anybody's
humanist
thoughts. But that's just, it's kind of an English quirk. Maybe there's other languages like it, but I know famously in Hebrew and in Greek in particular, there's at least two words for love they distinguish different kinds of love.
Yes, and I would say in Spanish. You know what? I never get to speak Spanish anymore here, so I'm gonna say it as well. There's te amo, like I love you. For yo te amo, I love you. You would never say that to your parents. I qualify never,
unless you're in Arkansas. Okay.
I have no response to it.
Sorry, Arkansas. I'm just making fun of you.
Yeah. And now no one from there is going to watch this anymore. Anyway, te quiero. It means in English the only way to say would be I love you, but that's what you would say to your family, to your parents. Te amo would be for your spouse. Normally when you're on your knee about to propose marriage, or like when you're about to die in the Titanic, there's only one raft that you can give to your wife and your child.
There's just not enough room. Yes.
Yeah. So very specific, I would say, very dramatic, very, very, very powerful. And then for your friends, you would say me caes bien. It means I like you, but not in the romantic I like you. Me gustas is I like you. But you see, I hope you can see. There's two ways to say I like you in Spanish, and there's two ways to say I love you in Spanish. Likewise, what a perfect segue. In Greek, there's four ways to say I love you. Xenia. Well, I'm going to start with the ones that don't show up in the Bible, so we can get rid of them. Eros, which is where erotic comes from.
So,
like your
sexy time love.
Yeah, sexy, kinky. Not in the Bible. I thought I'd find in the Songs of Solomon in the Septuagint. It's not there. So out of the Bible. Xenia is hospitality, kindness towards strangers. Not in the Bible. Get out of here.
Who cares about that? Get out of here.
The ones that are in the Bible, in the Septuagint and in the New Testament are, as everyone knows, agape. Everyone knows agape.
If you have a pastor who hasn't said the word agape at least 5 times, he's probably really manly. I don't know why I even said that. I don't like when pastors obsessive over agape. I guess I've heard it too many times. I'm jaded, but anyways, okay.
It loses its power
It
if
does
you
lose
say
its
it too
power.
often. So,
But it's a unique Greek word for love. It's different that's why pastors are obsessed with it. I think for the most part is that it's different than the English word love.
yes, it would be more like the Spanish amar, which is it's reserved for very special occasions, like when you're dying or when you're proposing to somebody, or some powerful situation like that. And then the second one is philia, which is you get words like philanthropy. Anthropos means man, or like human, mankind. So philos, love of mankind, philanthropy. You have other words. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to give those examples. It's just, but I'll say it anyways. Like pedophile. Pedo means child, and philia, love of children. So, but philia is a friendly love, which is very strange why they would choose that for that word. But anyway, I digress. Agape is sacrificial love. It's very intense, very powerful. It's used to describe the love that God has for humans, and also for the Son, and also the Son for the Father and the Spirit. And philia is used often in the New Testament to describe, it's sometimes translated as brotherly love, but sometimes it's just the word love is in English, so it's not qualified by brotherly love. So it's you're surprised if you look at the Greek New Testament or the Septuagint, the Old Testament, and you find, oh, they use philia there, or they use agape there, which helps clarify the situation. I'll give an example in a bit. And I should talk about the Hebrew ones. There's 2 common ones. The most common one is ahab, which is, it's like the English one, can be literally anything. Could mean sexy love, could be friendly love, could be godly love, the love that God has for humans. And there's a second one that's not as common. It's a chesed, which is compassion, mercy, loving kindness. It's very, from what I've seen, I really don't know how it's used. I probably should.
Some Hebrew thing. Have you ever read the Hebrew translations on Bible Hub or wherever you go? And it's like absolute caveman talk. I'm just gonna insult Hebrew here, but it's like you'll read a thing and it's like, I exhort you, brothers, to love yourselves as I love your brothers as you love yourself, and that's what it is in English. And then you read Hebrew. Of course, that's some weird New Testament. I don't know what I'm quoting. I'm quoting a fake thing here, but it'll be like that. That'll be the text in English. I exhort you, brothers, love your brothers as yourselves. And then in Hebrew, it's like, important. You love, brothers love you. And so it's just like caveman. So I don't understand it at all. So I'm not surprised. Hesed, you don't even know it's you.
Yes. And that's actually very orderly. Sometimes the you is at the end of the word, or the love is somewhere, it's very direct, I would say. I'm going to be diplomatic. It's very direct. So, ahab, the one that you have to know, it's translated philia or agape in the Septuagint. How and why? Ask the translators who did it 2,000 years ago. Don't ask me. But it's just there. I just want you to be aware of that, because this is important. I'll give you an example of where this plays in. I've been doing a Bible study on 1 Peter with my church. So in 1 Peter 1, I'll read you the English. From verse 22. Now that you have purified yourself by obeying the truth, so that you have sincere love for each other, love one another deeply from the heart. Example of love, what we've been talking about. Now, if you look at in the Greek New Testament, the truth, so that you have sincere love for each other. That would be philia. So you have philia for one another. And then it says, love one another deeply from the heart. That would actually be agape. One another deeply from the heart. So in that same sentence, in English it's one word, love, and then love. But in Greek it's philia, have philia for one another. And then the other one is agape, have an agape for one another. So that's just interesting.
Yeah,
it's just fascinating to contemplate.
And we would be remiss not to speak about it, because every pastor with his robes, do pastors wear robes anymore? Anyways, any pastor with his salt is usually going to talk about agape and be obsessed with it. So we're talking about it because it is love.
Indeed. One last one, because this one is important, and this is something that I have been contemplating for a while now. 2 Peter. Peter's just, he really stepped up his game after denying Jesus and all of that.
They were compensating, okay?
Yes, yeah. In 2 Peter, in the first chapter, he gives a sequence. I think I talked about this before. I don't know if on the podcast or maybe it's just to you and I'm confusing. Anyway, he gives a sequence on how to progress with faith. Faith is the foundation. By the way, faith precedes trust. So it's not blind faith, as some people just say, just believe in Jesus. I would say it's more trust in Jesus. A little bit stronger, but that's just my preference. Faith, the beginning. Then to faith, goodness. To goodness, knowledge. To knowledge, self-control. To self-control, perseverance. To perseverance, godliness. To godliness, mutual affection. To mutual affection, love. Those are so that's the progression of how you develop your faith. So it's actually a step-by-step process, which is fascinating for me, at least, to been meditating on this for a while. But look at the last two steps: mutual affection and love. Mutual affection, qualitative, as I was describing, that's philia. That's the word used in the letter, in the original letter written by, maybe not by Peter, but at least commissioned by Peter. And then the last one, love, that one is agape. So he says mutual affection, treat each other as our brothers and sisters, filial love. And then the end goal, have the same love that God has for us, which is agape, sacrificial love. That's just fascinating to talk. I think it was on point with what we're discussing today.
And I mean, it kind of shows that when they call us to love, so when the scripture calls us to love each other from our hearts, that agape love, it includes that whole, like it's really a big tier word. It's not a little tier, like first thing is love. It's all of that you just said. Like it includes mutual affection, it includes self-control, it includes all these different things. So love is like the big end game. And then again, that's kind of how it is the pillar of the two lead commandments, right? Mm-hmm. It's a big word. It's not just a little word,
right?
Because in English we can say, I love this peanut butter, right? Or I love I love it when people call my name, or I don't know. You can say things like flippantly that you love, and loving this peanut butter really qualifies that I like to eat it. Like that's not loving. Like I have self-control and mutual affection and love. Like there's no mutual affection with this peanut butter. Like there's it's nothing like that.
Hopefully not, unless okay.
Anything, Theodore, you want to say about like other philosophies of love or anything like that before we get into our other
so sections? We did like a little bit Islam, Buddhism, but Hinduism and even atheism, they could probably share this. Back to like they don't really have a basis of love because they have like a million scriptures or human writings or presumed revelations that eventually mere changing mortals mold or remold their definition of love throughout the times, whereas the Christian scriptures are comparatively pretty concise and clear in that regard. But they, concise, but also expansive if you want to look into it more in the Bible. And then also in other faiths, they don't really have that ultimate example of love, that person, which for us, Jesus. But every human that other religions idolize, or every idol that they personify, inherently has imperfections. But with Jesus, we have a human person with whom we can relate, and he was the perfect example of self-sacrifice and salvific, the only example of salvific sacrifice. And then also with other religions, Hinduism or atheism, when they love, as they define it, it becomes like a source of pride, as we talked about for them, and because they think they've come to it by their own efforts.
Yes.
And obviously pride, that goes down deep, because pride was like the primeval sin, the premier sin of Satan and Eve. As you mentioned in Genesis 3:5, and then 1 Timothy 3 says something like, lest he become conceited or arrogant and fall under the same judgment as the devil.
Yeah, well, I agree with what you have to say. So you're saying essentially that first of all, atheism and Hinduism and a lot of other places, like their definition of love is ridiculously loose. And so, you know, they call themselves, like atheists constantly will call themselves moral and loving, but they have got no definition for what morality is. Like, what's his name? Sam.
Harris?
Oh my gosh. What?
Sam Harris?
Yes, Sam Harris, famous atheist. His he made a whole career about trying to create a non-God-based morality, and others have in the past too. So it's not just a modern thing. Like Bentham is a famous morality guy that I learned in ethics class, and he's an atheist and just trying to figure out some objective way to determine love. Essentially, like how do you determine morality? How do you determine what love is without God? And spoiler alert, in case you take an ethics class and they tell you about Bentham and Kant and Sam Harris, I'm sure one day he'll be in those classes too. All of their things are all about like utility and non-hurting other people, non-aggression principles and things like that, but they don't ultimately have a core, like we love because God has commanded us. They don't have an ultimate example of love. And like you said, and the second point that I got out of what you're saying there, Theodore, is that we have a prolific example of perfect love through Jesus, not only his presence with us today through the Holy Spirit, but also like what he did on earth, everything that he did, walking around doing real, regular human stuff, we know is out of perfect love because of the definition of who Jesus was. And therefore, we have a lot of different examples to look at through the Gospels and through the writings of the apostles that tell us what perfect love looks like on earth doing regular human things. Whereas a Hindu, they can't. I mean, they'll like, you know, meditate or whatever, and they'll say, oh yes, this is love because, you know, the blue demon told me. But in reality, like they're not sure if it's loving or not, besides their internal feelings, right? Besides their image of God coming out of them, thinking that giving a present to somebody is loving, you know, and because the image of God in them. Whereas we have an objective standard, not only for why we love, because God is love and told us to, and all that, but we also have an objective standard for what love is and what love did on earth, whereas the Hindu doesn't. You know, they might think they do for like one thing, but they don't have such a robust standard.
My first reaction to that is...
And you said...
Oh.
Oh, what?
Well, first Sebastian, then Theodore.
Okay. I was going to say, don't listen to that blue demon, because clearly he came from one of the cold hells. Okay.
Yeah, dude.
Buddhism
Why are you listening
episode.
to that guy? What's with the statues, huh?
Or the Blue Man Group. You might call that demon Legion
Don't
because
listen to
there's
the Blue
many
Man.
of them.
We are Legion as soon as they speak. That's why they don't speak.
And besides Blue Man, for atheists, and here's an interesting argument because we're on apologetics too, and same with possibly some Hindu scholars, that at the end of the day, it falls down to their opinion of what good is, of what love is. And what I always say is, who are you to tell me or other people what we should believe good is? What Christianity and even Islam have is that there's someone who is eternal compared to humans, who lives forever, who is mighty powerful. Now, that being has the right to determine what morality is. I would say even Greek gods or Roman gods or Norse gods have more authority than... There's a better foundation for morality than in atheism.
Kind of, but they come from creation, right? Like any of these created gods, like Norse mythology or whoever, they were just born into the world of morality. So like you might follow Thor's commands because Thor would kill you otherwise, yeah, but he's not the ultimate standard because there's actually a standard above him because he comes from creation, whereas our God created creation, right? So like not only do you listen to him because he could smote you out of existence, sure, but he's also the origin of love. He's the definition of it. Like we wouldn't have a definition without him.
Okay, take back those examples and put in Incan mythology because there is a creator god. So, and then there's other gods that came from there. Okay.
I don't know much about Incan theology.
All right.
Sorry, we interrupted you. Do you have thoughts there, Theodore?
Oh, that's okay. So you mentioned that atheist or Hindu definition of love is loose, and I would agree that it's loose, and yet it's tightly bound to be loose by fear and peer pressure of people who don't want to accept that there is a stricter definition.
Yeah, it's kind of bound on both sides, isn't it? So it's bound on that they don't want there to be a strict definition because they hate God, right? And that's the whole reason they're an atheist in the first place. But then it's also bound in that they don't... I think it's a combo of the fact that they, one, have the image of God in them, so they actually know what real love is, and so they kind of want their morality to fit what real morality is, minus a couple of key points they don't like. But also, when you hear them at like debates and stuff, I don't know how many debates you listen to atheists, but I was just listening to a couple today, actually. They often try to end their debates with some extreme emotional appeal, like kind of strangely out of sync with the rest of their entire debate, which is all about logic and facts and whatever else. Not that they're very good, but that's what their whole persona is, except at the very end. And I think it's not a genuine appeal. I think it is a appeal that this emotional appeal that they always do at the end, is a appeal because they know people like it. And so they make moralities that sound good, not necessarily, like maybe it's a bit because of their image of God in themselves, and they want real morality, but also I think they do it just because they are afraid people will not like them and think they're weird if they decide that there is no morality, right? Because atheist philosophy, people that do say that, which is consistent with atheism, people don't like them because they essentially say there's nothing wrong with rape, there's nothing wrong with murder, there's nothing wrong with, many things that people don't like. And so honestly, I think they do it, their morality is at one end, it fears God, right? They don't like morality that God gives because they hate him, and that's why they became an atheist in the first place. And on the other end, they fear man, because if they give a morality that is true to atheism, they might get like 100 angry soccer moms who pay their bills, banging out their door that they're a meanie, or even if they don't do that, they'll just not give to them anymore. Okay, I know that the clock is running, so let's go to the question of the day. Besides all the stuff we've already answered, and that is the saying from those very same soccer moms. Sorry, moms that have their kids at soccer. I know moms that I went to soccer as a kid too. I'm just Karen. I'm trying to avoid the classic word is Karen these days, but that offends Karens too. People named Karen. People that are over obsessed with emotion. They don't care about truth. They care about what feels good. Whatever you call that. I'm going to call that a soccer mom, but there's plenty of good soccer moms out there. Anyways, that kind of person often objects to Christianity, or real, genuine Christianity. They might call something else Christianity that's not. They say, I don't believe in the God of the Old Testament, or the reason I'm not a Christian, I'm just like a general theist or whatever, is because God is love. So they steal from John, right? They steal from the Gospels. God is love. So they hold that to be true because they like it. It makes them feel good. It makes their Facebook posts look better. But then they'll be like, but how could I just can't imagine how a loving God that is love, can condemn people to hell. So that's like an excuse of all Christianity, right? Because we all believe in some sort of punishment at the end. Or they use it just to deny the Old Testament and say, well, I don't believe that a loving God would ever condemn the Canaanites or whatever. Let me give a couple of scriptures just so we know what we're talking about. So we give 4 or 5 scriptures on what love is, and those Karen soccer mom people, they're fine with those definitions, right? That love is kind and love doesn't envy, and they're fine with John 3:16 usually, and they're fine with the whole God is love, and they love that, right? Again, tattooed on their chest. But they hate these couple of other passages. I'll take. There's many passages you can take from the Old Testament that show a judging God, but here's one.
I got one.
Oh, you got
Okay.
one? Share it.
Oh yeah, Genesis 6:5, the flood, which is, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, that every inclination of their thoughts, of their minds, was only evil all the time.
How unloving.
And then it goes into, well, they're gone.
Then he kills them all. Yep. And it's like there's like 3 or 4 reasons why non-Christians might hate that whole scenario, right? Not including the fact that they don't believe there's a flood and they don't believe in creator and all that, but certainly the whole judgment thing is also a scare to everyone too. But clearly, if you're a believing Christian, even if you're a wackadoodle Christian who doesn't believe in a worldwide flood or whatever, you're Dr. Michael Heiser and you believe it's a local flood. In any case, it is God's intention through Scripture clearly made known that man was evil. So not only is he judging men as evil, but he also kills them all. So that doesn't sound very loving, does it, Karen? Or what's another?
I like how you looked at me when you said Karen.
Like they if you told somebody else the evil intentions of somebody else's heart there's nothing but evil, and they'd be better off dead than living another day, people would be absolutely horrified. Now, someday you're probably not justified to say that kind of thing because we don't know the intentions of God's heart. But the same person that hates that you said that about somebody else hates that God says it about somebody else because they ultimately don't believe that God has the right to say that kind of thing. But of course he does. So that's how they dismiss Genesis, but they also dismiss the rest of the Old Testament. Here's from Isaiah, so we're smack dab in the middle of the Old Testament. Chapter 34, he says this. I'll just read it. I've got like 5 translations in front of me. I'm trying to get undistracted. Okay, Isaiah 34. You nations, come here and listen to you peoples. Pay attention. Hear the earth, hear, and all that is in the world and all that comes from it. The Lord is angry with all the nations, furious with their armies. He will set them apart for destruction, giving them over to slaughter. Their slain will be thrown out, and the stench of their corpses will rise. The mountains will flow with their blood. All the heavenly bodies will dissolve, the skies will roll up like a scroll, and their stars will wither away as leaves wither on the vine, and foliage on the fig tree. So, and even the next line is, when my sword has drunk its fill in the heavens, it will come down on Edom and on the people that I've set apart for destruction. So, like, this is God talking not only about particular, like there's many judgment passages in Isaiah and other places where he's talking about a particular people or whatever, and maybe you generally excuse that because those people might have been like super wicked, and nobody today is that wicked. But here's God saying that he's angry with all the nations, furious with them. And then he goes on to describe it like he's going to throw them down. The stench of their corpses will never go away, and their blood is going to be pouring off the mountaintop. Doesn't sound very loving, does it? But we know that God is love. And that's why the soccer mom character, whoever that is, they say, I don't believe in the God in the Old Testament because a loving God would never have the blood of these wicked people running from the mountains. Meanwhile, those same people, well, now I'm really just characterizing, I'm doing some caricature, but often those same people judge the exact same way. They believe that Donald Trump is viciously wicked and deserves to die, right? And yet they won't agree with a God who doesn't love. But like ultimately they have that image of God inside themselves that says that there are wicked deeds that need to be punished. Whether they're right in their judgments of those wicked deeds is one thing, but they hate these judgment passages, but they reject either the God of the Old Testament, which is the real living God, or they just reject the concept of a true God entirely. But if you're a Christian, you have to take the whole of Scripture, and you have to know that the same book, the same word that says that God is love, has this God, the same God in the Old Testament that says he's going to judge the wicked.
This is what gave rise to Gnosticism. Marcion just couldn't stand this, so I was like, yep, the God in the Old Testament is a different dude altogether, and definitely nothing to do with the guy in the New Testament, which is false. I don't know if now it's a good time if I could share some nice, gentle, merciful passages, or not yet.
Are you being serious? Because I've got other judgment ones.
Okay,
are they actually gentle? Okay, let's follow up with the gentle ones, but let me get 2 more just to prove that it's not just the God of the Old Testament that's a rude dude, or at least in Karen's assumption, it's a rude dude. Jesus is not immune to being a rude dude. Like he is love, but he also says, famously in Matthew chapter 15, to the Canaanite woman, she's begging with him, please heal my daughter, for she's severely tormented by a demon. He says that he's not sent for the other nations, but only for Israel, right? But she comes up, she's kneeling, she's begging to him, please help me, Lord. And he says this, even she's on her knees, she's in front of him, she's begging. Her daughter is severely tormented by a demon, and Jesus' response to her is, it is not right to take the children's bread and give it to the dogs. And he means her. He means your dog. Would anybody be loving if they said that? How could a loving person say that kind of thing to somebody else? That would immediately, you get ratioed on Twitter, you lose your job, whatever. Like that is the epitome of not loving. But here is the God of love, who most people who throw out the Old Testament don't also throw out the New Testament. So here's the New Testament. Jesus himself is in the Gospels, for crying out loud. He says this kind of thing to somebody. Now we all know that her response is, I hate you, that wasn't loving, and then she runs away and tweets mean things about him. Just kidding. She says, yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. So she admits that she's a dog. She humbles herself and says that, but she still asks for mercy anyways. And then, of course, God grants her, Jesus grants her her request. He says, your faith is great. Go and what you want, let it be done for you, right? And then her daughter is healed. So we know that God grants a request in this scenario, but he didn't have to. He could still be loving and not do that. I mean, his statement isn't true. He didn't lie when he said it's not right to take the children's bread and give it to the dogs, right? She just countered that, please give crumbs even to the dogs, right? So you have to realize that God isn't as picture perfect nice as you think he might be, or as a soccer mom might think he is, thinking that they've avoided the evil God by avoiding the Old Testament. No, it's the same God, new and old.
What they haven't told you is that her name was Karan, which is the Phoenician version of Karen.
yeah, whatever. No, it's not. Another
It's
one,
not,
a little known thought about, but Revelation 2, and Revelation is full of judgment
Mm-hmm.
passages, which of course is also in the New Testament. So again, like I guess maybe you only believe in the 4 Gospels, or you're only a red letter Christian. But again, even if you're only a red letter Christian, that Matthew 15 passage is still there. But here's one from Revelation, where Jesus is explicitly sounding not loving, where he says to one of the churches, he says, "But you have this in your favor. You hate the practices of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate." And some of them say, "You hate the Nicolaitans, just as I also hate them." So here's Jesus saying he hates these Nicolaitans or their works. That is the epitome. You cannot hate and also love. Some people will point to like 1 John and that whole like God is love scenario where it says like if you don't love, then you aren't with God because you don't have love in your heart and God is love. However, clearly you can be both the epitome and definition of love and also hate. But what you hate is evil things. The Nicolaitans were evil. Their practices were evil. So you hate evil. And in fact, I think you must hate evil if you love good. Anyways, all that to say, you cannot deny that, first of all, the Old Testament God is the same as the New Testament God. And second of all, if you believe that God is love because Scripture says God is love, you also must believe that Jesus said to the woman, it's not right to take the children's bread and give it to the dogs, or that he said this, that he hates the Nicolaitans, or to say that God said in Isaiah 36 that he's angry with all the nations, then he'll have their corpses stinking and stacked on the mountains and their blood running off the mountains. So like he has justice and judgment, and he is still loving. It's not unloving to have justice and violence and other things like that. Anyways, do you want to go to the gentle passages, Sebastian, to counterbalance?
Sure, I have one with both.
Okay.
Judgment and kindness. It's from Exodus. It's actually from the commandments. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments.
And that's kind of the sum up, I would say, of God's type of love, right? He judges the wicked, like he just said, but he also loves those he loves and those he has mercy on, right? Like he is pure love, but he's not only pure love.
Right. And I do have a good one that everyone forgets about that the Old Testament, I would say, holds just as much patience, grace, and mercy as the New. Can slam me if you want, but I do hold that. Think of all the times that God could have destroyed Israel, and it's like, no, for the sake of my promise to Abraham or to David, I will not destroy you now. In Jonah 4, it's a pretty good. He's a good one. He prayed to the Lord. Isn't this? By the way, this is after Jonah has been eaten by the sea creature. Then this is about spitting out.
Sea creature.
I'll go.
Okay.
I saw something interesting that
Big giant squid or something. What is it? A serpent?
The English word is fish, but it doesn't quite describe what the Hebrew word.
Okay.
I mean, so from this day forward, I'm actually going to use sea creature just for the sake of just to
weird.
encompass,
All right.
to be strange.
Okay.
So, but it's not a squid.
Get
no.
tangled in some algae. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah,
Tyrannosaurus whale.
Yeah.
Not quite. This is after the city spared, everyone repents, all of that. He prayed to the Lord. Isn't this what I said, Lord? That when I was still at home, that is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. What? This God is nice? Jonah says, I know you're a God of love. Oh, by the way, this isn't Ahab, this is actually Hesed, which I'm like, what?
Okay, there you go. Hesed, loving kindness.
To reach their own, but anyway, this God promised to destroy the city of Nineveh, and this is why it's like Jonah being a stubborn man. He's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. I know you're gonna be merciful at the end of the day. Well, clearly Jonah knew something about God. He was a prophet of God. Mm-hmm. He's describing him right here: slow to anger, abounding in love. God relents from sending calamity. Likewise, I would bring him in the life of Job. He permits evil to happen to him, done by Satan, to the destruction and death and whatnot. But even when Job starts getting rowdy and uppity at the end, he doesn't destroy him. He actually, God who doesn't need to, he explains, himself, not really gives a reason for his actions, but explains what is happening and blesses Job after that. So God is very patient throughout that entire ordeal and actually is merciful to Job. And the entirety of the Old Testament is God showing mercy and explaining
again and again, yeah,
how he's gonna for all the sacrifice is gonna show that future Messiah that's gonna come and restore humanity, restore his people to proper standing with him. That's the entirety of the Old Testament. All of that judgment displays his righteousness, and at the same time he displays his mercy and the future that he has planned ahead for his people. What more can I say?
You have any thoughts or closing thoughts, Theodore? Because otherwise I think we're at time.
Well, I guess even if you bring this to heaven and hell, if Jesus and Satan are opposites, ultimately, come eternity, we either Romans, whatever is that? Romans something. We either conform to the image of God's Son, Jesus, or we become conformed to Satan's ways of pride and loneliness and hate and contempt and whatnot. And one practical question you could extract from that concept is, and everyone can ask this for themselves, do I want to act, obey, and behave like Jesus did, or be like Satan, deceiving, despising, and endlessly desiring things and desiring to build one's own pride? And those are separate ways.
Yeah, I'll nitpick and say I don't think Jesus and Satan are exact opposites, because that might be like, they're equal but opposite, which they're not. But I think Satan is the most influential being besides God. So if you're not with God, you're actually with Satan. That's why Jesus calls everyone that's not his a child of the devil, because they're not neutral, right? They're not just their own. They're not just their own wickedness. They're actually immediately influenced by Satan, because if they're not influenced by God, they're immediately influenced by Satan.
Another example of Jesus slapping people with calling them childs of demons.
Yes.
And brood of vipers and a bunch of other stuff, yeah.
Whitewashed tombs. I just memorized that, actually, all that section. Okay, well, that's what we have found our cause in serving the Lord Jesus Christ, who is love and who is the definition of love. And that's why we do this, to share the wonderful news of the gospel, to equip you at home for being able to respond to the soccer mom who says that they don't believe it, specifically soccer moms. Anybody else, I don't know how you're going to respond to them. But if a soccer mom asks you how you believe in a God who is love but also judges people so harshly, now you know how to respond. And if a Buddhist asks, I guess there's a couple people we talked about in this episode. Thanks for listening. We've been The Found Cause. I've been Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my left has been
Sebastian, the bookkeeper.
And virtually in the front has been
Theodore, under the person of Christ.
Ooh, you've updated it.
Under the PC.
More theological. All right. If you want to see the rest of our episodes, you can go to foundcause.podbean.com and download them all for your listening pleasure there. You can also go to facebook.com/foundcause or go to our YouTube channel, Found Cause, and see all our episodes live and in person. We are all videoed up for your watching pleasure. So if you ever want to see those, we're all there. We're also on Spotify and iTunes and wherever else you get your podcasts. So until next time, when we talk about something completely different, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.